He didn't know he was married to a cheat. At least, he didn't want to believe it. For Mark, the smell of freshly cut grass from the front lawn, mixed with the aroma of the roast coming from the kitchen, was the sound and scent of success, of the peace he had fought so hard to build. Their house in an upscale Charlotte neighborhood wasn't just brick and mortar. It was a monument to the second chance he had given. Jessica, his wife, hummed some random pop song as she chopped vegetables with a mesmerizing precision. At 32, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that had once lit up his world, she was the picture of the perfect American wife. But Mark held her cell phone in his pants pocket, a rectangle of glass and metal that felt like it weighed a ton, burning against his skin. He had grabbed it while she was in the shower, moved by a cold suspicion that had haunted him for weeks. And what he found wasn't just betrayal. It was a spectacle of disrespect. The messages left no room for doubt. They were from a number saved as Personal Trainer John. But the content was anything but professional. There were photos. One of them, taken in the passenger seat of Jessica's car, showed the smiling face of a man Mark had never seen. The caption, sent by her, was a knife driven into his chest, counting the minutes to see you again. Away from here. The word here was their house, the home he provided for, the walls that had witnessed her tears years ago when she swore, with her hand on the family Bible, that her first slip-up had been a stupid, one-time mistake. He remembered the bitter taste of forgiveness, the pain of swallowing his pride to keep the family he loved together. He had believed her. He had believed her remorse was real. Now, reading the casual conversations and sordid plans, he finally understood. Her only regret, the first time, was getting caught. She turned, drying her hands on a dish towel, and the smile on her face faltered when she saw his expression. "Is everything okay, honey? You look pale," she said, her voice tinged with a false concern that now sounded like an insult to Mark's ears. He didn't answer. He just walked slowly to the polished granite island that separated them, his silence filling the kitchen suffocatingly. The sound of the knife hitting the cutting board stopped. The pop music in the background seemed to fade away. He felt his heart pound, not with anger, but with a terrible clarity, like a man who survives an accident and sees the wreckage around him for the first time. Every detail of that kitchen, every expensive appliance he bought, every picture on the wall she chose, it all felt like a sham. The life he thought he had was just a stage set, and he was the only one who didn't know he was acting. With a deliberate movement, he took her phone out of his pocket and slid it across the cold granite surface. The screen was lit up, open to the conversation that would seal their fate. Jessica's eyes followed the device, and for a split second, the mask fell. Mark saw pure panic, her mind racing a mile a minute, calculating lies, searching for escape routes. "Mark, what is this? Did you go through my phone?" she began, trying to turn the tables, trying to make him the guilty one for invading her privacy. But her voice trembled. He watched her, impassive, like a scientist observing a chemical reaction he had already expected. He wasn't going to scream. He wasn't going to break plates. The pain inside him was so deep, it had turned into a frightening calm. He had spent all his rage the first time. This time, there was only the end. Tears began to well up in her eyes as soon as the first excuse failed. It was her secret weapon, the crying that always disarmed him. "Mark, I swear to God I'm sorry," she sobbed, coming around the granite island and trying to grab his arm. "It's not what it looks like. I can explain. It was a moment of weakness. Please, don't throw everything away." But when her hand touched his forearm, he pulled away as if he'd received an electric shock. Her touch, once his safe harbor, now disgusted him. He looked deep into her eyes, seeing not remorse, but the raw fear of losing the provider, the house, the status. She wasn't mourning their love. She was mourning the fall of her castle. And with a voice he barely recognized as his own, so cold and lifeless, he uttered the words that would end that chapter forever. "It's over, Jess. I don't love you anymore." The silence that followed was louder than any scream, and in that moment, their perfect house began to crumble. Mark's 6 words, I don't love you anymore, hung in the air like a death sentence. For Jessica, the world didn't just stop. It shattered into a million pieces. A sharp ringing in her ears drowned out the sound of the roast beginning to burn in the oven. An ignored alarm that their perfect life was going up in smoke. "No, you can't be serious," she stammered, her crying turning into a desperate, incredulous laugh. "Mark, look at me. It's me, Jess. We can fix this. Every couple goes through crises." She tried to get closer again, her hands outstretched in a plea, the performance of her life being staged in that immaculate kitchen. She resorted to her usual arsenal, the memories, the trips, the inside jokes, but nothing hit the mark. She was talking to a wall of ice. The man she knew, who had forgiven her once with tears in his eyes, was gone. In his place was a stranger with his face, whose eyes stared at her with a calm that terrified her more than any shouting. Mark watched her desperation with surgical detachment. He saw every tear as a tactic, every promise as an empty echo of the ones he had heard before. His mind took him back in time, a flashback so vivid he could almost smell the rain from that night 3 years ago. He had been sitting in the same spot, in the same kitchen, while Jessica, her face swollen from crying, told him about the mistake she had made on a business trip. She swore it was the pressure, the alcohol, the loneliness. She clung to him, sobbing into his chest, promising to dedicate every second of her life to regaining his trust. "You are my world, Mark. I would die without you," she had said. And he, the lovesick fool, believed her. He chose to believe because the alternative, living without her, seemed impossible. Now watching her repeat the same gestures, the same rehearsed lines, he realized that the only thing that had died that day was her respect for him. "Go pack a bag, Jess," he said, his firm voice breaking the spell of her plea. "You can stay at your mother's for a few days." The practicality of the order hit her like a slap. There was no room for negotiation. He wasn't asking, he was informing. "A bag? Mark, this is my house," she yelled, her voice finally rising to a tone of indignation. "We built this together." The word "we" sounded absurd to him. "I built this, Jessica. I paid for every brick in this house with the trust that you were here with me." "But you never were," he replied, without raising his voice. His own phone buzzed on the counter. It was his younger sister, Emily. He picked up the device and turned, walking toward the back door that led to the yard, leaving her alone with the echo of his words and the smell of burnt food. If this story has touched you so far, showing the pain of broken trust, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss how this drama unfolds. As he answered the call outside, the cool night air seemed to clear some of the toxic atmosphere from the kitchen. "Mark, is everything okay? You didn't answer my text," said Emily's concerned voice. Mark took a deep breath. "It happened again, Em. This is it." There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line, followed by a sigh that was not of surprise but of confirmation. "I'm so sorry, brother. I really am," she said, her voice soft. "But you know what I think. She's not sorry she did it. She's panicked she got caught. Her tears are for losing the castle, not the king." Emily's words were the validation he didn't know he needed. It was the truth he was finally ready to face. "I know," he replied, looking through the glass door at Jessica's silhouette, who was now pacing back and forth in the kitchen, desperation etched in every movement. "This time I know." After hanging up, he stood there for another minute, gathering the strength he would need for the final step. When he went back inside, the scene had changed. Jessica had turned off the oven and was now leaning against the sink, her arms crossed, an expression of defiance hardening her tear-stained face. Sadness had given way to anger. "You can't just kick me out. I have rights," she said, her voice low and threatening. Mark shook his head, not with sadness, but with a kind of final disappointment. He had expected this. He had expected that once the tears failed, the claws would come out. He walked to a drawer, took out a notepad and a pen, and wrote down a phone number. He tore off the paper and placed it on the granite island, in the same spot where her phone had been before. "This is my lawyer's number," he said, his voice completely devoid of emotion. "Tell yours to call him tomorrow. He'll have all the details about our separation." The word lawyer sucked all the air out of the room. It was no longer a couple's fight. It was the formal beginning of a war. And Jessica realized, with a chill, that she didn't stand a chance of winning. The word lawyer was the silver bullet. It annihilated any fantasy Jessica might still have had that this was just a passing fight. The silence that settled in the kitchen was heavy, dense, broken only by her trembling breath. She looked at Mark, searching for a glimpse of the man who had loved her, but found nothing. It was like looking at the polished surface of a frozen lake. She knew there had been life under there once, but now it was just a cold, impenetrable expanse. Without another word, she turned and went upstairs, each step an echo of her defeat. The soft carpet under her feet, which once gave her a sense of luxury and comfort, now seemed to mock her. In the enormous walk-in closet, rows of designer clothes and boxes of expensive shoes stared back at her. They were the spoils of a war she didn't even know she was fighting, and which she had just lost annihilatingly. As she dragged a suitcase out of the closet, her hands trembled. What should she take? She picked up a silk dress, a birthday gift from Mark, and the fabric felt like it burned her fingers. She tossed it aside. She grabbed a leather handbag that had cost a month's salary for an average worker. Useless. For the first time, she looked at all those objects not as status symbols, but as evidence of her own superficiality. She wasn't mourning the love she had lost. She had killed it bit by bit, with every clandestine message, every whispered lie. She was mourning the life that was being torn away from her. With a sob of pure frustration, she started throwing random clothes into the suitcase. Jeans, blouses, underwear, the essentials, the kind of thing you take when you're fleeing a disaster. The sound of the zipper closing was the most final sound she had ever heard. Coming down the stairs, dragging the suitcase behind her, she saw that Mark was nowhere to be found. The front door was unlocked. It was a silent dismissal. He didn't even grant her the dignity of a final goodbye. As she walked out into the garage, the cold night air hit her. The engine of her SUV, also a gift from him, started with a soft purr. As the automatic gate opened, revealing the perfectly lit street of their dream neighborhood, she felt a lump in her throat. She was being exiled from paradise. Driving aimlessly for a few minutes, she finally pointed the car in the only possible direction. Her mother's house, on the other side of town. A smaller, noisier place that represented everything she had worked so hard to escape. With every mile that took her further from that house, reality became sharper and crueler. Meanwhile, back at the now silent house, Mark was on the phone, but it wasn't with his lawyer yet. It was with a 24-hour locksmith. "Yes, I need all the locks changed, the front, the back, and the garage. Yes, tonight. It's an emergency." His voice was calm, methodical. He wasn't acting on impulse or anger. It was surgery. Precise, clean, necessary to remove the cancer that threatened to consume him. After hanging up, he walked through the living room. On the mantelpiece, there was a collection of picture frames. Him and Jessica smiling in Paris. Him and Jessica hugging on the beach. One by one, he picked up each frame, opened the back, and removed her photo, leaving only his own image or an empty space in its place. He didn't tear the photos. He just stacked them on the coffee table, like artifacts from a past life to be filed away and forgotten. He wasn't erasing history. He was just finishing the book. When Jessica finally arrived at her mother's house, the difference was jarring. The lights were dimmer. The smell was of mothballs and home cooking, not expensive scented candles. Her mother, Carol, a practical woman in her 60s, met her at the door with a look that mixed pity with an "I told you so." After Jessica told the story between sobs, sitting on the floral sofa that hadn't changed in 2 decades, Carol didn't offer easy hugs. She served a cup of tea and said, "What did you expect, Jessica? A man like Mark forgives you once out of love. He doesn't forgive you a second time out of intelligence." Her mother's harsh words offered no comfort, only the raw, naked truth. In that moment, on the uncomfortable sofa of her childhood, Jessica realized the depth of her mistake. She hadn't just betrayed a good man. She had underestimated his strength, his ability to finally put himself first. And that, she was beginning to understand, was an unforgivable offense. The first few days at her mother's house were a blur of self-pity and denial. Jessica would wake up in her old teenage bedroom with faded posters of 2000s bands on the walls, a museum of a simpler life she now despised. Reality hit her on the first Monday morning when she tried to order an expensive coffee through an app, a small ritual to try to feel normal. Payment declined. She tried another card. Payment declined. With her heart racing, she opened her banking app. The balance in the joint account, which usually boasted 6 figures, was at 0. He had emptied it, transferring every penny to an account in his name only. Panic, cold, and electric shot down her spine. She was no longer Mrs. Jessica Thompson, wife of a successful executive. She was just Jessica, a 32-year-old unemployed woman, sitting on a single bed without a dollar to her name. The financial humiliation was just the beginning. The social one followed swiftly and mercilessly. She called Megan, the wife of one of Mark's best friends, expecting a gossip session and maybe a little compassion. The conversation was glacial. "Look, Jess, I heard what happened," Megan said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "Honestly, I don't know what to tell you. Mark is like a brother to David. We're all very disappointed." The word disappointed was a stab wound. Jessica tried to defend herself, to blame stress, loneliness, anything. But Megan cut her off. "We saw how much Mark suffered the first time. We saw how he fought to forgive you. To do it again, there's no excuse. I have to go, Jess. Take care." The call ended, and the silence that followed was the sound of doors closing all over Charlotte. She was a pariah. The shopping friends, the lunch partners, the country club companions, they were all part of Mark's world, and she had just been kicked out. The final blow came in the form of an email with a PDF attachment. The sender was from Mark's law firm. The subject was "Initial Terms of Dissolution of Marriage." With trembling hands, she opened the document. It was clinical, impersonal, and brutal. The divorce petition had already been filed, citing irreconcilable differences and proven infidelity. Thanks to a prenuptial agreement she barely remembered signing, she was entitled to almost none of his assets. No alimony, given the nature of the separation. The SUV she drove was leased in Mark's company's name and would be repossessed at the end of the week. She would have a 2-hour window the following Saturday, accompanied by a legal representative, to retrieve her strictly personal belongings from the house. The document was a legal annihilation of her existence for the past 8 years. "He can't do this!" she screamed, throwing her phone onto the sofa. Her mother, who walked into the room with a basket of laundry, looked at her with tired eyes. "He can, and he is, Jessica. You signed the paper." "But I helped him. I decorated that house. I organized the parties. I built a social life for him," she argued, her voice shrill. Carol sighed, placing the basket on the floor. "You spent his money, dear. You didn't build anything. You were the manager of a property that wasn't yours, and you were fired for breaking the most important clause in the contract: loyalty." Her mother's truth was like salt in an open wound. There was no solace, no refuge. Everywhere she turned, she found only the reflection of her own actions. While Jessica drowned in her despair, Mark was in another world. Not a world of celebration, but of methodical reconstruction. He spent long hours at the office, diving into work with a renewed focus. On weekends, he started hiking in the nearby mountains, pushing his body to the limit, feeling the physical pain in his muscles to drown out the phantom pain in his chest. He cleared the house of any trace of her. He hired a design firm to change the furniture, the colors, the energy of the place. He was tearing out the past by the roots, not with anger, but with the precision of a gardener removing weeds so that something new and healthy could grow. He was investing in himself, reclaiming the time and energy he had spent trying to fix something that was irreparably broken. And with each passing day, the image of Jessica became smaller, more distant, like a memory of a nightmare from which he had finally awakened. 2 years passed. 2 years that for Jessica felt like 20. The glamorous life in Charlotte was now a distant memory, like a movie she had watched about someone else. She lived in a small rented apartment 40 minutes from downtown, where the constant smell was a mix of her own microwave dinners and the cheap disinfectant used in the hallway. She worked as a receptionist at a dental clinic, a job that barely paid her bills and left her with a forced smile on her face all day. The men she met were fleeting, attracted by her beauty that still lingered, but repelled by the bitterness that had settled in her eyes. At night, the silence of her apartment was deafening, a constant reminder that the only regret she felt most of the time was for having been careless. She still didn't understand the magnitude of what she had lost. She just missed the comfort, the money, and the ease. For Mark, those same 2 years were a journey of rebirth. After the divorce, he sold the house, that monument to a broken promise. It was too big, too quiet, too haunted. He bought a smaller, cozier house in a neighborhood with more trees and fewer pretenses. And it was there, at a local coffee shop, that he met Sarah. She was a landscape architect, a woman with dirt under her nails, and a smile that wasn't a performance but a genuine reflection of her soul. Their relationship wasn't a fiery explosion of passion, but the slow, steady growth of a strong tree. With her, there were no games, no secrets. There were honest conversations, laughter that came from the depths of their souls, and a mutual respect that Mark never knew could exist. Trust, for him, was no longer something to be given blindly, but something to be built, brick by brick, and Sarah was the best construction partner he could have ever found. The final scene unfolds on a sunny Sunday in the backyard of Mark's new house. The air is filled with the smell of barbecue and birthday cake. Colorful balloons are tied to the porch, and a small crowd of friends and family, including Emily and her family, are laughing and talking. At the center of it all, Mark holds his 1-year-old son, Leo, on his lap, as Sarah approaches with a small cake with a single lit candle. Mark's face is the picture of peace. There are no traces of the broken, cold man from 2 years ago. There is a warmth in his eyes that Jessica never saw, a contentment that money can't buy. He looks at Sarah, and the love in his gaze is so real, so palpable, that everyone around seems to feel it. They sing happy birthday to little Leo, and the baby's laugh is the purest melody in the world. Thousands of miles away on her lunch break, Jessica is sitting in her car, scrolling through a social media feed with little interest. It's an escape from the monotony of scheduling tartar cleanings. Suddenly, she stops. A photo posted by Emily, Mark's sister. The caption reads, "My perfect nephew's first birthday. So proud of the amazing brother and wonderful sister-in-law I have." The image is a punch to the gut. It's Mark, Sarah, and the baby, frozen in that moment of pure happiness in the backyard. Mark is laughing, his head thrown back. Sarah is looking at him with an adoration that Jessica had tried to imitate but never truly felt. And the baby in his arms is the personification of a future from which she has been permanently excluded. In that instant, seeing that photo on the cold screen of her cell phone, it finally dawned on her, and the pain she felt was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It wasn't the pain of losing the status, the credit cards, or the big house. It was the sharp, hollow, devastating pain of understanding. Her crying on that fateful night wasn't out of genuine remorse. Her desperation in the following weeks wasn't for lost love. It was from the fear of the fall. But now, looking at Mark's complete and undeniable happiness, she understood. The real punishment wasn't losing the provider. The real punishment was seeing the irrefutable proof that the man she betrayed, the man who loved her so much that he gave her a second chance she treated like trash, not only survived without her, but flourished. And she, for the first time, truly regretted it. Not for getting caught, but for destroying the only real thing she ever had. And with that regret came the certainty that she would live with that ghost forever. Did this story impact you? If you believe in the power of second chances, but also in the strength of those who decide to rise again, Leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more narratives like this. Comment below with the city you're watching from, hit the bell to be the first to know about new stories, and explore our other videos. Your new favorite story might be just one click away.